Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990s Represent. We're starting off our third cycle on 1996 with an album, and this episode we're talking about Odelay by Beck. Definitely one of Beck's best albums. Very successful. Touches on so many different genres. And I think like at the time, like he was just being very prolific with his recordings. I remember reading like some various ranking lists where this one usually ranks within. It's usually at number one, sometimes at number two. But Beck had a really good run of albums like from like this album Odelay. I think the follow up was Mutations from 2 years later. I think I covered that in my 1998 series, so I'll link that one down below. And then follow that up with Midnight Vultures, just another incredible album. So just a very good run of albums. Remember first hearing Beck, I think like in maybe like 1995 it was maybe. It's whenever I saw the video for Loser, which was off Mellow Gold, which was from 1994. But just very prolific at the time. I think he's like released like up to now he's up to like 14 studio albums or something like that. And I think this one is his fifth. So he was like putting out a ton of music at the time. From like I think even in 1994 he put out like 2 albums or something like that. But Odelay is the album we're talking about in this episode. I definitely have always really liked this album. First heard most of it in 1996, and like 1997 I was listening to it quite a bit as well. I have some notes here about it. We'll get through those notes, then we'll cover the track list and all that kind of stuff. So let me get my notes here. Got them out. So Odelay by Beck, first released June 18th, 1996. This is his 5th studio album. Like, let me actually, because he put it out in 1993. I think he put out 2 albums in 1994, maybe something in 1995, and then this. So, 5th studio album, and that's kind of crazy because I think his first album was in 1993. So by 1996, he had already put out, or at the point of releasing his 5th album. This is his most successful album, at least from a commercial standpoint. Sold very well. Very good singles off the album. A lot of friends had this album. I never bought it myself, but I remember like listening and borrowing my friends' copies quite often. It made or has made many like best of list of albums from that year, from 1996, as well as just overall general best of list of albums from the 1990s. So I think it also shows up in the book 1001 Albums You Should Listen to Before You Die, which I think that's the original edition, and I think they've expanded it, but I don't think it's in print anymore. But I have a digital copy I've been like looking at to get inspiration for this series as well as my other music series as well. So it shows up on that. But really quick little story about this particular album, and in particular the song Where It's At. So, 1996, I remember my friend had a friend of my friend and I were driving to pick up another friend of ours at the Denver airport after coming back. And I'm like, up in the mountains, there really wasn't a whole lot of radio stations. There was like maybe 2 that you would get like fairly clearly. And then I think eventually they put in some like, don't know if they're called translators or something that basically intercepts a signal and then rebroadcast it. They put some of those in at some point for other stations, like some of the more front-rangey kind of stations like Boulder, like KBCO and stuff like that. But I think up in the mountains it was KSMT and KYSL, I think, were the 2 major ones. I think it was KYSL, which was more adult contemporary, and then KSMT for a really long time was also adult contemporary, but I think around 1994, maybe 1995, they kind of switched it to be more focused on alternative rock. So they would play a lot of, I remember hearing like a lot of Nirvana on there, Stone Temple Pilots, Alanis Morissette, Garbage, kind of around that time period. So probably like maybe 1994 is when they switched it. Because I remember talking to a friend of mine and being like, he was saying how he was listening to KSMT. I'm like, KSMT, like, that station isn't that great. He's like, oh no, they completely changed their like programming. It's all like alternative or rock now. They're like, okay, cool. But anyway, so your options were really limited up there with those 2 stations, basically. As soon as you get through the Eisenhower Tunnel, you get access to a ton of the front range stations. And it's almost akin to Wizard of Oz, where basically it goes from being black and white to color, because the options are just so much. There's so many more options for like radio stations. At least at this time there was. You would have like a lot of like oldie stations. You would have some hip hop stations, some alternative stations. So basically, like whatever you basically got through the tunnel, you're switching to a better station. Or so we switched to an alternative station, and I think Where It's At came on, and it's just Where It's At. Got two turntables and a microphone. Where It's At. Two turntables and a microphone. I remember my friend like who's driving like is like, did he just say he's got two turntables and a microphone? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. And I think my friend was just like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, just really cool. Basically, way like I think that's the first song I heard off that album was Where It's At, because it's just like that line or that little like phrase or whatever you want to call it of got two turntables and a microphone is just classic. That station, remember, we were also played like when we were driving, played some No Doubt. I think they played Rage Against the Machine, and it was just like a really cool like 2 hour like or so drive of just really good music. Just talking to my friend about like the stuff that they were playing and stuff like that. Then we picked up our friend, came back, and it was all good. But that's kind of just a quick little story. Another interesting story about the radio stations up at that time period were my best friend in high school, his brother, who I mentioned on this show before, his brother, who was a like DJ for like the high school dances, and I think had like other like functions with DJ various like events and stuff, had a way to take like a boombox, like a regular like your usually the boomboxes that I had like a CD player, like one CD, cassette deck, and radio like built into it. He somehow found a way. I don't remember if like every one of these boomboxes had this, but he basically found a way to plug a cable, like coaxial TV cable, into that, and somehow was able to get access to the front range radio stations through the. I don't really know exactly like what else he did, because I remember like looking at the back of one of his boom boxes and it just had a cable sticking out of it, out of like a connector. So like, don't know if that was a thing that you could just do. But basically, like he had a bunch of those, and he was able to kind of just get those stations at home, which is pretty cool. Anyway, that kind of digressed there a little bit. We're going to go back to talking about Odelay. Excuse me. So originally, apparently, the album was supposed to be more acoustic, and Beck was working with two producers, which are Tom Rothrock and Rob Shrift. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it started off more acoustic with them, but eventually he moved away from those two producers and ended up working with the Dust Brothers instead. And they have a more kind of like hip hop focus. So I think a lot of the hip hop influence on the album comes from them. Sorry, excuse me again. But the album doesn't just do hip hop; it does so many different like genres. There's like alternative, has some folk, it has some country. There was like a little quote here from All Music was saying it includes folk, country, grungy garage rock, stiff-boned electro, exotica, old school rap, and noise rock. And then somebody from Rolling Stone also noted that it included, or at least pulled, influences from punk rock, bossa nova, Latin soul, and mainstream R&B. So not necessarily of those genres, but it pulls in elements from those genres into what Beck was doing. Beck is like so versed in multiple genres, it's really hard to like take an album and just say like this is this particular genre. It's really hard to pitch, and I think it's a good thing because it's hard to pigeonhole the album just because of it has so many different influences from so many different genres. I think I just class it under alternative for like my kind of like cataloging of it, but I don't really know like where it would actually. I think alternative is probably like the best fit for it, but it has so many different genres going for it that it's really hard to kind of classify. But you can't speak on the album without speaking about the album art. The album art, keep getting thrown off. Not that way. The camera mirrors it, so it's that direction. You have this dog jumping over like an agility hurdle, and according to my research, I knew the dog was a Commodore because I used to watch some of the like kind of like dog shows and stuff, and the Commodore always reminds me of like a mop. Basically, it looks like a mop. But it's a Commodore jumping over an agility hurdle, and apparently it was photographed in 1977 for the American Kennel Club Gazette. or like one of the issues of that magazine or publication. So they basically took this old photo, repurposed it, and made it the album cover. It's one of the most kind of, I think, iconic album covers of the time period because it's just so weird. It's like you have this dog jumping over this hurdle, which turns out is a photograph from like 19 years earlier, and it just is weird because I think a lot of people at that time hadn't seen this kind of dog before. I probably hadn't seen it until I saw this cover myself. But years later, I remember like watching some various dog shows, like TV, like televised dog shows, and seeing these dogs. But it's kind of a very humorous album cover. I don't really know what's so funny about it. Maybe it's just because the dog looks like a mop and it's jumping over a bar. I don't really know. But it's a really weird album cover, but it's kind of iconic at the same time. We're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the reviews for this album. So basically, it came out to basically universal acclaim kind of right away. Amazing reviews across the board. So like All Music has it at a 5 out of 5. Chicago Tribune has it at a 4 out of 4. An A minus from Entertainment Weekly. Guardian has it at a 4 out of 5. The LA Times has it at a 4 out of 4. NME has it at an 8 out of 10. A 9.8 out of 10 from Pitchfork. I don't know if that was at the time or if that's a retrospective review. But again, like we've mentioned in some other music videos, Pitchfork, I think, is very kind of, I don't want to say stingy, but they are very harsh on their album reviews. So I don't know if this is a recent review, like it's a retrospective looking back at it, or if that was the original review. I don't know how long Pitchfork's been around. But Rolling Stone also has it at a 4 out of 5. Spin has it at a 10 out of 10, and The Village Voice has it at an A minus. Let's see here. Nominated for a couple Grammys, so it's nominated for Album of the Year for the 1997 Grammys, as well as Best Alternative Music Album, which it won for that. So it won for the Best Alternative Album, but didn't win Album of the Year. But still, Best Alternative Album is pretty good. And finally, we're going to now just turn it over and take a look at the track list here. The track list, we have 13 tracks at a little over 54 minutes and 6 seconds. Track 1 is Devil's Haircut. Just that opens up with that iconic, I think it's bass, it's like bow, 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 bow. So track one is Devil's Haircut, one of the most iconic tracks on the album. Track 2 is Hot Wax. Track 3 is Track 3 is Lord Only Knows. Track 4 is The New Pollution. That's a really great one there. Track 5 is Derelict. Track 6 is Novocaine. And track 7 is Jackass. Track 8 is Where It's At. Again, probably the first song I heard on the album. And it just has some various hip-hop influences. You know, it talks about 2 turntables and a microphone. Classic Beck track there. Track 9 is Midas. Track 10 is Sissy Neck. Track 11 is Ready Made. And then that was track 11. Track 12 is High Five, in parentheses, Rock the Catskills. And then track 13 is Ramshackle. And then it includes a track 13, which is Ramshackle, also includes a minute-long hidden track of just various noise. So kind of a hidden track on that one as well. But one of Beck's most iconic records, like I said, my top 3 are this, Mutations, and Midnight Vultures. I don't really know where I rank them within that top 3. But this one definitely put Beck. Beck was, I would say, kind of popular before this came out, but I think Odelay definitely kind of propelled him further, like into like the kind of mainstream, like put him into like the upper like stratosphere as far as popularity goes. Because I think like after this, he's been incredibly popular ever since this. Remember him doing a bit on Futurama. I think it was Bended in the Wind. A great episode of Futurama if you haven't seen that. But Odelay by Beck is just a classic album. It's like a mishmash of various genres, but highly recommended. That is going to do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few days covering a movie from 1996. Don't know when that's going to be just yet. And then after that, we'll be doing another video game before moving into 1997 again. So again, thanks again for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one.